What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Tape. TJ Wengert here with you to unveil my very first 3-round NFL mock draft for the 2026 draft cycle, of course. So we've got, let me double check my notes, 100 picks to run through today. The first 3-rounder that I'm doing, but I'm excited to be able to go dive a little bit further into this class. And it also creates a better snapshot of what I'm trying to build when I build these mocks. I think that's certainly the case when we go from 1 round to 2, because it gives an idea of I didn't go this position group because I would do it in the second. And then now we're adding another round on top of that too. So getting to really build what I think is the backbone of a class, right? When I do my draft grades, I'm mostly basing it off your top 100. There might be some day 3 guys that I like and give you a little bit of a boost there, but it's mostly about how you make your money in the top 100. And that's what we're going to start doing from this point on in our mock drafts, which we'll be doing once a week. So if that sounds exciting to you, if you're watching on YouTube, definitely subscribe, hit the like button. It's a free way to support us here at 32 Beat Writers. Another free way to help us out. Go to the comment section, leave us a comment, but also just swipe over and hit the hype button. It takes 2 seconds, and it's the next big thing that the YouTube algorithm is going to start pushing out. So those 2 things would be awesome. And if this is at all any interest to you and you want to get more into the draft cycle, or you like what 32 Beat Writers does, we are unveiling a lot of really new, cool, and exciting stuff over at our website, including eventually, I'm hopefully not going to get in too much trouble for saying this, but a lower tier to be able to join for just $3 a month. Normal tier is $10. So we are introducing a lower package that gets you all the access, all the information you need to know. So definitely go check out 32beatwriters.com. Everything we have on the website, my work, Soraya Katsabedian, our lead fantasy analyst, Charlie, our lead betting analyst, plus all the nuggets, the beat writer reports, everything like that. Cool. All the house cleaning out of the way. We've got 100 picks to jump through. I've got my coffee right off to the side of me, so there might be some points here where I have to catch my breath and try to save my voice here. But 100 picks. Let's kick it off with what is the easiest one of any sort of mock. It's Fernando Mendoza going number 1 overall. Not the only Hoosier that we're taking in this mock for the Raiders, and I'll leave it at that. That's called a tease in the TV biz. Then we get to the Jets, and I'm going to stick with the Arvell Reese pick here at 2. I keep going back and forth between Reese and Bain. But I think here at 2, I think Bain is the safest player that the Jets could take here, but Reese probably is the highest upside of any of the guys that they could take here. So let's say that Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji and co. decide to take a big swing of the bat. Go ahead and get out in a very good linebacker class. Get a guy that helps out in that area, but also brings a really interesting blend of pass rush juice with his power, his hands, his stack and shed ability against the run. So could be a little bit of a hybrid player there for the Jets. So they take the swing of the bat for the home run play at 2. Then we get to the Cardinals, and I'm going to go with Francis Mauigoa. This is starting to feel like it's becoming a little chalky around draft circles, which I find interesting. The Cardinals were picking 3, trade back to 12, then back up to 6, get Paris Johnson Jr. I'm sure the Cardinals would love to do that, but it takes 2 to tango, and there's just not going to be a team that trades up this year in the top 8. At least I don't think that's going to be the case. So with that being the spot that the Cardinals are in, I can totally see a world where offensive-minded head coach comes in. Let's solidify this tackle tandem. Even if we would prefer to take this guy at 6 versus 3, let's take the next highest guy on our board. Don't know their board, so I can't say that for certain. But between Sonny Styles, Jeremiah Love, I could see where the offensive-minded head coach says, hey, let's get our tackle tandem in the future. That's exactly what we do with Mauigoa at 3. Let me get to the Titans. And I haven't done this in a long time, but I'm going to go Jordyn Tyson here at 4. More often than not, I find myself going edge here for the Titans, but just going to mix that order up. Instead of going edge, then receiver at the top of the second round, I'm going to do receiver here, edge at the top of the second, which I think there's a good player that they get to take there at 36. And Tyson, yes, he comes with the injury risks, but I just think about Brian Daboll, now the OC, and, whether it was with the Bills with Stephon Diggs, the Giants with Malik Neighbors when he was healthy, he's always had that number 1 volume guy for his quarterback. And right now, I like a Umanor. Chimere Dike is a solid, slot gadget player, and they got a good amount of production out of him as a rookie, especially considering he's a day 3 pick. They don't have that number 1 guy, the alpha, the guy who could take over an offense and be the clear-cut guy that makes everyone else fall into the right spot. Tyson's got that upside. And of his tape on the field, he's the best receiver in this class. He's not my receiver 1, partially because of those injuries, but his on-field tape, when he's out there, if you take injuries aside, he's the best receiver in the class. So I could see the Titans being willing to take a risk, and I think he would be actually a great pair with Cam Ward. All right, let's get to the Giants. And I'm always trying to explore different possibilities. We do these mocks once a week. So really, this is just kind of me gaming out a lot of different scenarios. Who could go high, who could go low, who could fall, who could rise. What if this team stacks it this way? What if this team does that instead? And I'm kind of exploring that here. Daniel Jeremiah had his mock come out about a week ago, and he had the top 2 tackles, CC and Fano, both off the board by 4. So let's explore something kind of similar. I have them both off the board now by 5. And I could see a world where once CC Moe is off the board, the next team that really likes Fano could be like, okay, well, this is our shot to take him because Moe is already gone. So let's play that out here. We'll go receiver at the top of the second round. That would have been the other consideration here for the Giants. I understand the Caleb Downs love, but I'm also a big Javon Holland guy, and I think he could be that Kyle Hamilton for John Harbaugh and then Coach Denard at the DC spot. So I'm going to say they're good there. Let's go Fano here, and then we'll go receiver at the top of the second. Speaking of receiver, this is what I'm doing for the Browns. There's going to be a stack. You see me do a lot through the first 3 picks of their mock, and I've already done it a lot. But Carnell Tate, this is their bona fide X, number 1. Put him on the line of scrimmage, run the offense through this guy. This is the alpha for a receiver room that is looking for a whole lot of overhaul, O-line and receiver, but getting specific on the receiver room, they're looking for an alpha, and Tate, I think, is that alpha. Then we get to the Commanders here at 7, and I wanted to explore a little something interesting here. I'm going to have them trade back with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and using the point charts, this is pretty much about an equal trade. And I know what you're saying, like, oh my God, Pittsburgh's going to move up their second and their third. That's an overpay. When you have 2 additional third-round picks, so basically you're still coming away with 3 swings of the bat in the top 100, just like you would if you had a first, a second, and a third. Just instead, it's going to be a top 10 pick and then 2/3. I can see a world where the Steelers are willing to take this chance, and then you look over here at the Commanders haul, their draft class, what they have, 2 top 100 picks. Not going to cut it. So this feels like a trade that works for both sides. The PFF mock draft simulator seems to agree. And that gives the Pittsburgh Steelers the chance to draft Makai Lemon, who is, at this point, my receiver 1. I think if it came down to it, now I know this is going to sound like, okay, the Steelers guy gives his team its receiver 1. Okay, gamesmanship there. It's an expensive cost, to trade up nonetheless. But I could just see a world where Mike McCarthy looks at this as like, I'm not saying he's CeeDee Lamb, but I'm going to put this guy in the slot, and he's going to have the 3-way go, and whoever's under center, they're going to have this high volume, nice yards after the catch guy who just makes big plays happen. Shades of what CeeDee Lamb was for Dallas. And you have the big body X guy on the outside with DK Metcalf. So I think it's an ideal 1-2 punch, and you still got 2 more third-round picks. So we're not done drafting for the Steelers, which is the exciting part. You get to move up from 21 to 7, but we're still not done here in this 3-round mock draft. And then the Commanders get some much-needed ammunition. I would be shocked, honestly, if they don't trade back. Again, it's hard for me to see a team trading up into the top 6 is more of what I should have said earlier. 7's the spot where maybe like Cincinnati, Miami, Dallas, maybe not Dallas because division trade, but 7's maybe the spot where Washington's eager enough to trade back, and there could be a team that has their eyes on a defensive player falling. But in this case, it's Makai Lemon still being on the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then to the New Orleans Saints, I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love here. I've been wanting to do this for a little bit, but I could just see a world where Kellen Moore looks at this guy and says, okay, yeah, that's my Saquon Barkley. He'll be the heartbeat of my offense. He can be a pass-catching weapon for us. And really, this is more so not Devin Neal slander, because I'm a big Devin Neal guy. Was one of my favorite running backs in a loaded running back class last year. All those videos and rankings are up on the channel. But this is more Kendrick Miller slander. I didn't really love him going to Tennessee. He was like fine for what he was, but he's also missed a ton of time. So a 1-2 punch of Devin Neal, who's not super athletic, shifty, but not like long speed, crazy explosive, but just reads it out, quick on his feet, good lateral cuts, takes what's given to him. And then you have Jeremiah Love, who's kind of the home run threat waiting to happen, plus brings some really nice pass catching skills to the table. So I really like Neal plus Love as that 1-2 for Coach Kellen Moore. Then we get to the Kansas City Chiefs. I said this in the last mock, where I think if there's one player who's like the top guy on the Chiefs board, who of any player we could have fall to us, who would it be? I think it's Ruben Payne Jr. They're looking for pass rush help, and this guy can line up inside and out. So on top of, they already do that with Chris Jones. So get to have a whole lot of fun with those two guys and how you mix match their matchups week to week against whoever you're playing. And then also Spagnuolo will use stunts and twists. And I think that's going to be an area where Ruben Payne is just an absolute monster at the next level. So Chiefs get their guy in Ruben Payne. In Cincinnati Bengals, like David Bailey's got to be, this is like hard floor. Bailey's not getting past pick 10 because you went first round edge last year and you did it a couple of years ago with Myles Murphy, but David Bailey is, you compare the guys they've taken and where they took them versus like where you're getting Bailey, that in and of itself is a big difference. But to like Murphy, athletic project, Shamar Stewart, top 10 player on my board last year. So like I've got my hand up. I know the PFF grade's not great. We'll see where it goes the rest of his rookie contract, but not fully there as a pass rushing product, explosive disruptor, but not turning those pressures into sacks. Bailey is doing that. So like this is the guy, and frankly, this is the guy who could be that alpha pass rush winner that then, on the other side, Shamar Stewart's getting one-on-ones and he's a bull in the china shop, the ultimate bull in a china shop and he's going to win some one-on-ones from time to time. And maybe that's how you get Shamar Stewart to look like a better first-round pick on top of that. So Bailey's floor here is 10. I just don't see the Bengals passing up on this, even with Caleb Downs here, even with Sonny Styles. With Henderson out the door, I just don't see them passing on Bailey if he makes it there. And in turn, I think that makes the rest of that pass rush room look a whole lot better. Miami Dolphins, this was tough because like Downs, Styles, Delane all make sense here. I'm going to go with Mansour Delane. I have a higher grade on Downs, but they still have Minka Fitzpatrick there for a year. Jeff Hafley, a lot of cover 1, cover 3, a lot of single high looks. So I already think Fitzpatrick's kind of looking forward to playing in that scheme. I think he's a really good fit for that scheme. So you could move on from Minka. You save like $7 million against the cap if you cut him, and then you could draft Downs here. But of the tape we have, the single high center field stuff is the least amount of a role we have for Caleb Downs. So I could see a world where they're like, hey, we've got a guy that fits. Let's go boost up this corner room. Rasul Douglas is getting old. Jack Jones is up and down. Let's go get a guy who can be our CB1 for years to come. Jeff Hafley, has worked with a lot of really talented corners, comes from that side of the ball, defensive-minded guy. I can totally see where he's like, Mansour Delane, that's my guy, because his tape is so clean. It's coach's tape for a lot of – it's just so technically refined, and his feet are just excellent. So a lot of defensive-minded head coaches, I think, are going to love Mansour Delane. And this becomes a home run pick for the Dallas Cowboys, because one of the two Ohio State guys you can't go wrong with here, Downs or Styles. I'm going to go with Downs, just because I never have the chance to do Downs, honestly. This is easily the lowest I've had Caleb fall in a mock, and he's a top 5 player on my board. Like, he's one of the best players in this class. And then same thing with Styles. Like, I haven't had Styles fall to where he's going to fall in this mock since, God, I couldn't even, maybe August, September. Like, it's been a long time since we've seen Styles fall this far. But safety and linebacker, the reason I do some of these mocks is to explore a lot of different things, and there's totally a possibility the uber talented safety, albeit a safety, falls on the board, i.e. Kyle Hamilton. This is 2 picks higher than Hamilton win. He's anything with Styles. He's a super talented blue chip linebacker for me, but he's a linebacker, so it still could be tricky for where teams want to value that guy. So here, the Cowboys have not addressed safety in like a long time, specifically in the first round. But, they kind of broke that rule with Mozzie Smith. That was like the first D tackle they took in the first round in like 15, 20 years. So I think if Caleb Downs fell to them at 12, they'd be willing to break their, past draft history and upgrade what is clearly one of the weakest spots on that roster. And then the LA Rams, they just hired the Tennessee DBs coach to be their DBs coach. So home run selection here, Gerard McCoy. Jamal McCoy is my top corner in the class. I know he didn't play at all last year, but his 24-25 tape is the best of any corner in his class to me, even more so than Delane this year, who was fantastic for LSU. Plus, McCoy's just going to have the athletic testing and a more prototypical size to go with it. So he's my CB1. Got the college coach there now in LA. They need a big physical boundary corner, and I think McCoy is that change of pace. They have guys right now that are either vertically or horizontally challenged, right? Forbes is 163. Darius Williams is 5'9", so he's the vertically challenged. Forbes is the horizontally challenged. I'm stealing that from Sam Monts. I just love the way he put that in one of the Check the Mic episodes. So I think McCoy is basically the answer, kind of the overall number one guy that makes life easier with those other guys on the field. Baltimore Ravens, I'm going to go Peter Woods here. This is like a really good floor for him. I don't know if it's the absolute floor for him. It's the absolute floor for Woods is probably 18 in Minnesota. Pairing him up with Jalen Redmond would be a lot of fun. But I just think this is your 3-tech. No guarantee that Nami Madubuike is back. Travis Jones is a really solid run-stopping nose tackle. So looking to fill in that 3-tech spot. Peter Woods brings more run defense reinforcements, plus his athletic potential and the flashes we've seen as a pass rusher makes you wonder, is there anything more there? So going to a stable, traditional franchise like the Baltimore Ravens, I think would be a good place for Woods to go to see if there is that little bit more meat on the bone. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like I said earlier, where the Chiefs' number one guy on their board is Bain. The number one guy for the Bengals is probably David Bailey. The number one guy for the Bucs has got to be Sonny Styles. And I mean, I'm sure they would love David Bailey, but let's err in the realm of reality. If I'm saying Bailey's not getting out of the top 10, that means he's not getting to 15. And I don't see Jason Light trading up. Maybe I'm wrong. But if Styles falls to you at 15, and this is a sprint the card in situation, he's far better, specifically in coverage, than Servassier Dennis. This is the guy that Levante David could hand the torch to. This is like your next all-pro linebacker. He's, like I said, this is the first linebacker I've given a blue chip grade to, him and Arvell Reese. But at least Reese, you're kind of thinking, is he a hybrid edge rusher? Is he an off-ball linebacker? Or is he a full-time edge? Edge is a part of that conversation. Styles is the first true off-the-ball linebacker I've ever given a blue chip grade to, because he doesn't miss tackles, has sideline-to-sideline speed, has good eyes in coverage. You wish he was a little bit more of a playmaker, but, beggars can't be choosers. He does everything else at a high level, so I would love this here for the Tampa Bay Bucs. The question is, I know he's a linebacker, but he's such a good football player, and this class lacks top-end talent. Does he even make it to 15? It'd be a home run for the Bucs, but I know. As I was putting this together, I was like, I might be stretching the realms of believability here, stretching the verisimilitude, if you will. Let's get to the Jets and let's go Denzel Boston. I've done this once before, but it's a really good fit. And I know Boston's got his fans out there, but the Jets need a number one X physical receiver. They're missing physicality at the receiver spot. So Denzel Boston brings that and then some. Very fluid mover in and out of his breaks. The forward is going to be a big question. If I had to guess, it'd be mid 4.5s. That's not necessarily the reason you're going to draft Boston, but his red zone ability, the body control, big wingspan, big friendly target for whoever's under center for the for the Jets. And then this moves Garrett Wilson into a Z/slot role with Adonai Mitchell there. I think it would be Boston as the X, Adonai as the Z, Garrett Wilson as the slot, which that sounds like a home run fit. And that would probably put Garrett Wilson, again, he doesn't have Dak Prescott throwing him the ball. He doesn't have Brian Schottenheimer calling plays, but Garrett Wilson could be a CeeDee Lamb type of impact player once the situation around him makes sense and matches kind of what CeeDee has. Let's get to the Detroit Lions. I'm sticking with it. Again, until I know what's going on with Taylor Decker, left tackle is a huge position that they just can't ignore. And it also could be right tackle, right? Penei Sewell, college left tackle. We've seen Tristan Wirfs make that jump. I think Sewell could make that jump to the left side. I just, at this point, Moino is gone. Fano's gone. So the next best tackle to me is a left tackle. So we're just going to keep Sewell where he is. Plug in Caleb Lomo. He's not the world's greatest run blocker, so that might be the one thing that doesn't fully match with the Lions' identity. But I think, really even just maybe one offseason, if he picks it up quick, he can get his body into a spot where there's more power, there's more muscle on his frame, and could be a little bit more of that run blocking presence the Lions have typically liked. But at the worst, you're getting one of the better pass protectors in this class. And that's going to go a long way, right? Goff, one of the few, it's been better in Detroit, but one of the ways you get into Jared Goff's head, one of the ways you can enable a bad Jared Goff game is by getting pressure on him. So one of the best pass protecting left tackles feels like, a remedy for preventing that if you're the Lions. To the Minnesota Vikings, Brian Flores is back in as the DC. So Avion Terrell all day. This would be such a home run fit. One of the best back pedals in this class, which you have to do with how much Flores is asking these guys to show this and then, retreat back. And we're really playing this a ton of times where their corners are kind of showing cover 3, but then that guy's having a back pedal and he's really playing kind of a cover 2 split, over the top of the middle of the field. So, or just over the top of the defense. So his explosive back pedal, his ability to create forced fumbles, his willingness to tackle, his overall movement skill, everything about this guy is just Brian Flores written all over him. So love this. Not the last secondary pick I have planned for the Vikings today. To the Carolina Panthers, I'm going to go Kenyon Sadiq here. I know it's not a high position value and they've gone pass catcher each of the last 3 years in the first round, but man, I just don't care at the same time. I think they got a nice 1-2 of pass catchers, but I think Sadiq would be a nice third fiddle behind Coker and Tedero McMillan. Plus what his blocking brings to that run game, I think is very, very important and very valuable. And ultimately you could go edge here, but the edge rushers you get here at 19 versus the edge guys available at 51, I'd rather just take something else at 19, to be completely honest. Just my opinion. So once we get to 51, I hope that makes sense. It's been a guy I've drafted a ton to the Panthers, but I would be willing to take a swing of the bat on something other than edge, knowing that this is a deep edge class, and almost certainly there's going to be a guy who kind of fits more of what they don't currently have on top of Scorton and Princely Uman-Mielen. So let's get to the Dallas Cowboys then at pick 20. I'm going to go with Keldrick Falk here. Thought about TJ Parker, but I think Falk's going to go round 1 just because he's 20 on draft night. He's a really good athlete. There's going to be a team that's willing to take a swing of the bat on what the upside is. And, the Cowboys, obviously, rest in peace, Marshawn Nealon, Javion Clowney is a free agent. So a lot of overhaul at that edge group spot or edge position. And I could see a world where they're looking at the young guy, the upside, the promise. And this is a team that wanted to put emphasis on their run defense, right? Part of the reason they trade Micah Parsons, at least this is what Jerry says, is because of the run defense. Part of the reason you trade for a Quentin Williams is because of the run defense component. So I can see a world where the Dallas Cowboys are one of the teams in the first round where they're like, hey, he's a work in progress as a pass rusher. We'll work with that, but the run D plays right away. Let's take a shot on him. And specifically here at 20, I think it's pretty solid value. Then we get to the Washington Commanders. Never get the chance to see this. So we'll probably see it in some more mocks. I do think them in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has the extra ammunition to move up the board. Washington desperately needs more ammunition. And then here at 21, this is a team that needs pass rush firepower. So Cassius Howell, the arm's going to be short, but the lower half is fine for being able to play against the run. You know who else has, not great arm length for most traditional edge rush standards? Micah Parsons. And you know who coached Micah Parsons, right? Dan Quinn. So now, granted, Howell's not an off-ball linebacker converted to edge, and he's not, he's got some get-off, and he's explosive, and he's got sick inside counters. He's not Micah Parsons. Trust me, I'm not saying Cassius Howell is Micah Parsons. But considering Quinn's experience with a guy who has a dense, powerful lower half but shorter arms, but because of that, Parsons, I don't know, he's still not the world's greatest run defender, but he held his own for 240. I can see a world where Dan Quinn sees Cassius Howell the same way. They also have a few guys that are coming back off injury that already kind of fit the early down run stopping role. So even if, Howell's a 2.5 down player, right? Like not ideal for first down, but he's out there for second and third downs. And then obviously for passing situations, he brings the juice this team just doesn't have. So from that standpoint, I'm willing to bite the bullet on his run defense because this team just needs a pass rush winner. And if this team gets back on track, the offense is rolling like it was 2 years ago, there's going to be a lot of games where they play with a lead. So let Cassius Howell be your Dwight Freeney type. Let him be the closer on the defensive side of the ball. Next up are the Los Angeles Chargers. It's going to be another one of our trades, and the PFF trade simulator has pulled it right up. Yep. It pretty much points-wise, it might be a little bit more than this fourth-round pick. It might be a fourth and like a sixth or, fifth right here. But for the most part, this is pretty much accurate with the points trade sheet. And this is one where, like, Vega Ioane is, to me, the best interior offensive lineman. He's honestly, like, Dane Brugger's, questioning, is he the best offensive lineman in this class? And I think there's at least a conversation that could be had about that. But he is certainly, to me, the best interior offensive lineman. But he's a good athlete and he can fit with the zone blocking, but I don't know if it's fully like Mike McDaniel, let's let these guys get out and run, wide zone, wides. I don't know if it's quite that fit. So I think he's a little bit more of a better fit for the Nick Haley gap scheme. I can move a little bit, but like primarily gap scheme, blow the dude off from the line of scrimmage across from you. Let me rephrase that. Light up the dude from across from you, man gap scheme, just make that dude move off the line of scrimmage. So I think Vega Ioane is a little bit more of a scheme fit in Houston than he is LA. So this is a trade that to me kind of makes sense for both sides. Houston's got an extra fourth-round pick. The Chargers, looking for a better scheme fit, are willing to take any extra capital, draft ammunition they can possibly get. Then here at 23, Philadelphia Eagles. This one, I would feel a whole lot better about it if Jeff Stoutland was still there, but I'm going to go Caden Proctor. The Mekhi Becton thing worked out pretty well. Tackle converted to guard. I still kind of lean towards Proctor being a guard. The arm length's not going to be great. And I really don't think he has a whole lot of – I think the anchor was better this year, but still leaves some to be desired for 367. And I do think if he wasn't a mountain of a man or, he's going against NFL comp, the outside shoulder can get exposed and overall foot speed to be able to prevent that outside shoulder of getting attacked. So I do think a slide inside the guard probably makes more sense for him. That being said, like left guard, it could be a potential opening here for the Eagles with Landon Dickerson. Will he, won't he retire? But also like Lane Johnson, heir apparent. So like one of two ways here. He's your Landon Dickerson replacement, and I'm feeling better about that. A Bama player for a Bama player. Or you switch Proctor over to the right side and you let him sit for a year behind Lane Johnson. And again, I'd feel better about that with Jeff Stoutland there, but at this point, I'm going to trust Sean Mannion that he brought in a good offensive line coach, because otherwise it's kind of weird that Stoutland wants nothing to do with that team anymore. So anyways, all that to say, upside play here, but he's got one of two different pathways to the field, whether it's at left guard or long-term at right tackle. That kind of gives me a little bit more hope that this could work out here at pick 23. So then back to the Cleveland Browns. Like I've been doing, I'm going to go with Monroe Freeling here. You go Tate at 6, Freeling. They have their entire starting 5 on the offensive line hitting the free agency market. They'll probably bring back, Batonio. He's a little bit of a franchise legend. And my rule of thumb has been I don't want to overhaul more than 2. Really, I don't want to do more than 3. Like 3 if I absolutely have to. But my rule of thumb has kind of always been like you don't want to do more than 2 changes on the offensive line, because continuity is a big part of what you need on the O-line to be successful. So exchanging more than 2 pieces to me is where you start getting like, oh man, this might not play well, especially early in the year. But if you have to do it, 3 does make sense. So I could see a world where Cleveland overhauls 3 of those starters this year, brings back a Batonio, maybe their center, and then they're replacing those other spots. Could also see a spot where, it's a new head coach. We're going to overhaul all 5 spots and start her from scratch. And if that's the case, well, you're going to need to start getting some tackles in that building. So Freeling's going to be one of them here at 24, and then we'll go tackle at their next pick at, I believe it's 38 to 39. So then we get to the Chicago Bears at 25. I'm going to go with Cade McDonald here. They're still looking for an upgrade at D tackle, specifically on the run defense side. Andrew Billings, kind of a Bears legend of sorts. At least a fan favorite. I'll put it that way. But, solid run defender, but he's getting up there in age, and they're paying him a decent amount of money to keep coming back on 1-year deals. So get younger, get cheaper, get better at that position in the form of Cade McDonald. To the Buffalo Bills, a pick I have not gotten the chance to do yet. I'm going to go with Casey Concepcion. Whether it's Josh Palmer back as the X, or it's getting a Mike Evans in free agency, or Romeo Dobbs in free agency, I'm not sure. But one of the, forgive the pun here, but one of the misconceptions is about Casey Concepcion is that he's a slot-only guy. When in reality, 2/3 of his snaps came outside of the slot. They came on the outside, primarily at Z. But that being said, I think Z slot is certainly a capability here for him at the next level. Also, Khalil Shakir, like we're getting up there in age for him. Not that they're going to move on from him this season, but thinking 5 years down the line, is Khalil Shakir a Bill? I don't know, probably not. And then, yeah, I know we're still figuring out the X component of this offense, but they also had Brandon Cooks playing X. So, like, not ideal for Concepcion, but, like, at this point, they might even just throw him out there. Also, should be said, Keon Coleman at this point still on the roster for the Bills. So, like, maybe he's just a sacrificial X at this point. But KC is, like, as a Z specifically, a guy you can play outside. You're just going to keep him off the line of scrimmage. Joe Brady, let's get this guy in motion, keep him away from press. This is what you wanted Brandon Cooks to be. Like, Casey Concepcion is just like the younger, better, cheaper version of that. The only thing with KC is like the drops. Definitely want to see the drops clean up. But Bills are about to move into a dome, so I'm hoping whether, kind of that being taken aside and out of the question here, at least for home game for KC, we can see those drops clean up. But his speed, twitchiness out of breaks, yards at the catchability, and an offense already has Josh Allen who can find him deep, but also has embraced the yards after the catch, getting the ball out quick. This feels like a home run fit. This feels like a first-round version of what they got when they drafted Khalil Shakir a few years ago. And I've always been a Shakir guy, big Shakir guy. But I do think this could be a nice passing of the torch, so to speak, from Shakir to KC. And also, he just brings more juice to the table naturally. All right, and then that takes us to the San Francisco 49ers. Another pick I have not done yet, but absolutely love the fit. Omar Cooper Jr. This is like a Shanahan guy through and through, explosive in and out of his breaks, body control, willingness to go make tough catches over the middle, good, eyes, concentration, will make some tough grabs in general. So I love this guy. He's a little bit of an overlap with Ricky Pearsall, but with a little bit bigger of a frame. I think he's just a little bit more filled out. Funny enough, the comp I've kind of been throwing around for Cooper Jr. is like a little bit bigger and more filled out version of Emmanuel Sanders, who, if I can remind you, played for the San Francisco 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. So to me, this is a hand in glove fit. Whether it's Casey or Omar Cooper Jr., I think those would be home run first round selections there. And one of those two guys should be there at 27 for the 49ers. So would love to see them go in that direction. And then, as we alluded to earlier, Chargers, Vega's a great player, but I think Emmanuel Pregnant's just a little bit more of a Mike McDaniel fit, a little bit better in the zone blocking scheme. So I think this is your plug and play upgrade on that interior offensive line, but not actually. Yes, we are done there for the offensive line today for the Chargers. Sorry, I got it confused. Thought about going somewhere else in the third round, but we'll get there when we get there. Rams here at 29. I'm going to do it. I haven't done it in a long time, but I'm going to go Ty Simpson here. I do think Ty Simpson's worthy of being a first-round pick. Really rough situation there at Bama. And here, an ideal landing spot. One, because you get to work with Sean McVay, sit behind Matt Stafford, a home run of places to be drafted into, especially when you're a guy with 15 college starts. And that's really where I think the timeline works here. You've got Stafford for another year. You don't really want to play Ty Simpson year one because he's only got 15 college starts. But if there's a world where he can sit for a season, you feel a little bit better about going into year two and passing that baton. So I think this is ideal landing spot for Ty and one of the better outcomes here for the Rams too when it comes to their long-term health. Now, granted, that being said, they have 2 first-round picks. They might not do that. If there's a tackle there at 13 and the corner here at 29, I've been doing that a lot of mock drafts. So certainly a possibility, but they also have the chance to set themselves up beyond the Matt Stafford era. All right, Denver Broncos are next up. I'm going to go with Lee Hunter. John Franklin Myers hitting free agency. DJ Jones getting up there in age. So Hunter could be a nose tackle replacement if they decide to move on from DJ Jones, save a little bit of money against the cap. Again, he's a little over 31 years old now. Or if John Franklin Myers is gone in free agency, you also have Zach Allen starting to creep up there in age. So whether it's nose tackle, 3-tech, whatever the plan is here for Lee Hunter, there is a pathway onto the field for the Denver Broncos. So really like this any way you slice it here. But I would say probably as a DJ Jones replacement. I think you play him at nose and then you get into passing situations, let him play a little bit of the 3-tech spot where he's had some good success as a pass rusher. New England Patriots are next up at 31. I'm going to go with Caleb Banks. I've been talking to one of the big supporters here, both on my YouTube channel, but here with 32 Beat Writers, and he's got his own podcast, Snap Judgments. Definitely go check it out. But he's a big Patriots fan. Randy is. So we've been kind of talking through what this offseason might look like for New England, and he brings up a good point. Like Christian Barmore totally makes sense as a trade candidate. Could totally see where like Kansas City is one of those teams that's looking to kick the tires on a pass rush specialist like Barmore. And ultimately, there's been some flashes, but it hasn't really totally come to fruition, taking that next step after year one and showing some of that promise. So in the event that they trade Christian Barmore and Caleb Banks is sitting there at 31, I think he's a really interesting compliment next to Milton Williams. I'm not the world's biggest Caleb Banks guy. I'd probably just let someone else take him somewhere round one just because the injuries kind of worry me and the pad level's a little inconsistent for me. That being said, if you're willing to take a shot on it and, late round one, I can understand the risk appetite for it. He becomes an interesting pairing, again, with Milton Williams, who's super athletic and wins in a variety of ways. And then you bring this guy in with as powerful a hands as you're going to see for a first-round D-tackle prospect. I kind of like that 1-2 punch. He's also played some edge, too. So, like, this team that kind of needs some edge help. A lot of interesting ways you can kind of get really, whatever that rotation is, whoever your best guys are, there's a lot of different ways to get those guys onto the field in New England. So, wanted to kick the tires here on Caleb Banks to the Patriots at 31. And then here at 32, I'm going to go with Colton Hood. I've been doing corner here primarily for Seattle, 32. Did you think about Dylan Thieneman? If they lose Kobe Bryant, I would totally love the Dylan Thieneman fit here. Keep him in state. That'd be a whole lot of fun. But Tariq Woolen, Josh Jobe, one of those two guys is probably gone at corner. So let's go ahead and backfill that spot with a very physical corner in Colton Hood. Then we get to the second round of fun here. We'll kick things off with the New York Jets taking Christian Miller. Obviously, a big hole in the middle of that D line with Quinnen Williams and that trade in the middle of the offseason or middle of the season. So let's go ahead and reshore up that run defense component with Christian Miller, and then we'll see what happens with him long term. I do think there's some interesting pass rush upside, but time will tell that story. And then from Christian Miller to another Georgia Bulldog, we'll go CJ Allen for the Arizona Cardinals. I think linebacker is definitely a spot in that defense that could use an upgrade. We didn't do it at 3, so here at 34, a guy who could have gone round 1, CJ Allen, I think makes a whole lot of sense. He's the hammer to the middle of that defense that they just don't have right now. Titans, like I promised, we're going to go edge here. I'm going to go TJ Parker. Really nice Senior Bowl. Even if it was a little bit of a more disappointing season, or at least a season at Clemson where he didn't take another leap forward, he's a guy who at least adds a little something in that room. Power rusher, can win with the long arm as well. Really good run defender. And you already have two guys who generate a lot of attention, and Tavondre said, but namely Jeffrey Simmons. So I think TJ Parker is going to get to see some nice one-on-one opportunities. And with that, he does it in kind of one singular way by being a power rusher and winning with long arms. But that being said, you get enough one-on-ones, you can turn those into pressures and you turn those into sacks. So I think this is a nice add there for the Titans at 35. Next up, the Vegas Raiders. I hadn't really realized it until I looked at our lads or the our lads and the PFF depth chart. But man, the safety room in Vegas is bad. Them letting Trevon Mara go a couple years ago is kind of a head scratcher considering you look at what the current safety room looks like. So I'm going to go with Dylan Thieneman. To me, clear cut safety too, and I like the safety class. A lot of the names in it, but Thieneman's a dude. And like I said, I considered him as early as the first round at 32 for Seattle, and he could have even come off the board earlier than that. So this is, whether it's at free safety, strong safety, split safety looks, whatever the plan is for the Raiders, he is by far and away day one their most talented safety on the roster. Then we get to the Giants here at 37. As promised, we're going to go receiver. This one had Jeremy Bernard come off the board. I've done this once before, and I've described Bernard this way a couple times, so apologies for repeating myself, but he kind of makes me think of Juju Smith-Schuster, that 2-year window where AB was still either the first or the second best receiver in football, and then Juju did all the little things you wanted of a number 2, soft spots and zones, makes the tough grabs, can separate just enough in man coverage, really solid blocker. And the Giants have a superstar in Malik Neighbors when he's healthy. So let's go get a guy that can play at all 3 spots, X, Y, Z, X, Z slot, I should say. Just can line them up all over the formation and can be that ultimate complement for a superstar in Malik Neighbors. Then we get back to the Houston Texans here at 38. This is probably as early as he could come off the board, but I did want to explore it. Jadarian Price going here at 38. I really like him as a between the tackles runner, and him plus Woody Marks. Price has never really been asked to be a pass catcher or really even on the field for pass blocking situations at Notre Dame, but that's what Woody Marks is there for. So I think it's a nice 1-2 punch. And Jonathan Brooks went off the board earlier than I thought. Sometimes that next running back, or in that year's class, it was the first running back off the board. Sometimes it comes a little earlier than you would think. So just want to explore that here. Well, what if there is another running back who goes top 40, top 50? And I think Price plus Woody Marks is a really nice 1-2 punch in the backfield. And it's a Houston run game that left a lot to be desired last year. So I could see a world where they're longing to get it back on track. So offensive line, now we go with a running back, starting to make life a little bit easier for CJ Stroud. To the Cleveland Browns at 39. Could go Blake Miller here, but I've been doing that a lot lately, so I do want to change it up. We're going the same position, but I did want to at least mix it up a little bit. Let's go with Max Ianachor, guy who just started, literally started playing his first real game of football 3 years ago at JUCO. Had a really nice second and third day at the Senior Bowl. First day was rough, but then took the necessary strides forward that you want to see, and it's kind of emblematic of his football journey thus far. So you could go Blake Miller. That's the better player right now, but I think the Browns have got some time, right? So let's go for the upside swing and say, hey, by year 3 of their rookie contracts, Ianachor is a better guy than Blake Miller. That being said, you could easily flip the next pick too, because now I'm going to have the Kansas City Chiefs take Blake Miller. Look, they got a lot of work to do to get cap compliant. And I know they've already restructured Pat Mahomes. That creates like $40 million, $45 million cap space. That's a huge win. But there's also a lot of obvious cuts that are going to come on that roster. And namely, it's Jawan Taylor. You save like $20 million by cutting Jawan Taylor. You save like $10 million by cutting Jalen Moore. So Josh Simmons, if you can count on him being, healthy and being present for the team, that's a home run pick at left tackle. And I think Blake Miller, multiple year starting experience, fits the blocking scheme, finally has added to that play strength and grip strength. That's kind of been the one thing that's kind of lagged behind for his profile. Last year at Clemson, he finally felt like he finally tacked on some muscle out of that grip strength. So I think he's NFL ready. And here at 40, plug him in at right tackle. That's a big win there for the Chiefs, especially, again, when it comes after you save $20 million against the cap by cutting Jawan Taylor. Pick 41, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to go with Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Their safety room is an absolute dumpster fire, to be completely honest with you. I like Jordan Battle, but it hasn't really worked out. Did like him coming out of Bama, so don't want to totally crap on that situation. But specifically, the Geno Stone thing just didn't work. And I would like to see Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, in a little bit more of a split safety look. Al Golden typically just runs the single high stuff, so he would probably be more of your hook/free safety. But I also think Battle with his instincts he's not the world's greatest athlete, but just his instincts and football IQ could definitely play at kind of free safety. And we've seen guys like Xavier Watts and another former Bengal, Jesse Bates, where they weren't the world's greatest testers 40 wise, but you get them far enough, away from the line of scrimmage, and you give them the time to be able to make a break on the football or a ball carrier, and it ultimately kind of plays the same. So McNeil-Warren is that, kind of box safety. Jordan Battle, then becomes the free safety playing over the top. I like that. It's at least worth a shot because it can't get much worse there in Cincinnati. And I will say also, like, in a division that is the AFC North, the Steelers have a ton of tight end options. The Ravens have always had tight ends be a big focal point of their offense. McNeil-Warren's a really, really interesting tight end eraser. He's not great at man coverage, but he has the body type to where, like, with the right coaching, you could see him get there. And he's also mastered the art of the peanut punch. So for a Bengals defense that needs any and all turnovers they could possibly get for such an explosive offense, maybe that's just the cheat. Who can get us the ball back into our offense's hands as many times as possible? And I think McNeil-Warren definitely plays from that standpoint. To the New Orleans Saints, let's go Chase Besantis here. We went running back early, but the one bugaboo about doing that in the top 10 is like, okay, well, do you love the offensive line? They've gone tackle in the first round each of the last 2 years, but the guard spots are certainly lagging behind. But I think Besantis, really good scheme fit. He's also an awesome pass protector. So to try to keep Tyler Shuck clean, the one thing about his profile coming out of college was like his response to pressure leaves some to be desired because of the injuries. I think that's kind of lived in his head. It was better this last year at New Orleans than I think it showed at Louisville. But that being said, let's just not have it coming into question by drafting the best pass protector in this interior offensive line class, and that is Chase Besantis. Next up, Miami Dolphins at 43. Look, Tyreek Hill has been, it's known now that he is going to be released. So receiver is definitely a spot where I want to see them add a body in that room. And Chris Bell, you're going to have to wait a little bit. But again, this is a Miami team that's not looking to win the Super Bowl next year. So we've got time to wait. But this could be that physical X receiver that frees up Jalen Waddle, keep him at Z, really, he'd stay at the Z, Malik Washington stays at the slot. So I think this is your X receiver in the making, really fun yards after the catch guy. And he's 6'1", 227. I mean, just built in a lab to be the next kind of, I'm not saying he's AJ Brown, but he's built in a lab to look like AJ Brown. So, we're going to need some route running refinement and things like that. But, when it comes to, and it's also going to need some expanding of his route tree, but the routes he runs right now, kind of the shallow cross drag, the go routes, the posts off of it, the comebacks off of the go. It plays enough right now. Big physical receiver that the Dolphins just don't currently have. And I think by having him at the X, it frees up everyone else to be where they are best served. New York Jets, next up on the clock here at 44. I'm going to go with Brandon Cisse. He could certainly go late first round. So getting him in here at 44 makes a lot of sense. Like him as a man coverage corner. Will get up in the face of receivers. So definitely an Aaron Glenn type of corner. And I'm not giving up on Azaria Thomas. This is more so like, is there a way we can phase out Brandon Stevens in that contract? If so, I'd like to see us get there. So Brandon Cisse, Azaria Thomas, hopefully the corner tandem on the outside long-term for the Jets. That takes us then to the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to go with Keith Abney here. Another guy that honestly, if you went late round one, you wouldn't hear any complaints out of me. I'm a big Keith Abney fan. One of the younger guys in this class at the corner spot. Great body control. Love him in man coverage, but also his eyes and his instincts and athleticism play really well in zone coverage. So Marlon Humphrey getting up there in age, and he's been kind of back and forth between slot corner and playing outside. So I think one more boundary corner would certainly go a long way. They got to win Nate Wiggins, but one more guy on the outside I think would go a long way, just bolstering up that secondary a little bit more. And Keith Abney here at 45 I think is really solid value. To the Bucs then at 46. We didn't go pass rusher in the first round. We went Sonny Styles. So I'm going to give him that pass rush help here in Akeem Mesidor. Another guy that could certainly go as much as 16 picks earlier than this, or, frankly, as high as 17 of the Lions doesn't feel impossible. But, and as much as I like Mesidor, he is NFL ready from a moves and hand fighting standpoint. He just, I kind of worry about the last year breakout and the fact that he just doesn't win with a whole lot of power. That being said, like the Bucks they're in a division where they can compete any given year. So they get an old guy who is ready to help them do just that and can bust out the moves and help you be a pass rush winner. And they just don't really have that type of guy presently on this roster. So doesn't have the power component, but just to get a pass rush winner on this roster, that's a big win in and of itself. Colts, you're next up on the clock here at 47. I'm going to give you my boy, Josiah Trotter. This is pretty much like the floor I've made for him. I think they could definitely get better at that linebacker spot. And this guy is just a thumper. He brings a ton of energy, great closing speed, plays with great violence. Totally a work in progress against as a zone coverage defender. But what he does as, a downhill linebacker, I think is really exciting. And to me, worth the selection inside the top 50. So you have to figure out the coverage component and who's going to be the guy that kind of pairs up with him. But when it comes to bringing some energy, keeping that run defense high in Indianapolis, keeping that as something they can be proud of, I think Josiah Trotter is a big win there. Then we get to the Atlanta Falcons. You're next up at 48. I typically go receiver here, but this time around, I'm going to go with Chris Johnson. I just still think that other corner spot has been lacking behind, and like Mike Hughes is just not an ideal guy to be playing at that outside corner spot. So I'm going to go with Chris Johnson. I like him both in man and zone and I think he's good enough in press situations to play. You have two great safeties, Xavier Watts, Jesse Bates. They'll help keep him clean on top of that. And also you have AJ Terrell, who's your number one corner. So the assignment Chris Johnson's given is going to kind of keep him insulated from being too, toasted in a week by week basis. But I think a number two corner would certainly go a long way, especially considering James Pierce. You're losing a little pass rush juice there. So you could go edge or something here to kind of offset that. But another way of keeping that pass rush looking so dominant is by, having a coverage unit that does their end of the bargain. All right. Vikings are next up. I'm going to go with Connor Lew. This is another team that's going to have to do some, cap gymnastics, probably moving on from TJ Hawkinson, Ryan Kelly, both with the concussions. It's probably good for him to retire in and of itself, but they also probably just have to make the business decision and move on from that signing as much as it made sense when they did it last year. With his injury history, it's just hard to justify the cap hit. And then also, that's where this gets a little tough is, okay, well, you're drafting a guy who's just coming off an ACL injury. But I'd be willing to take a chance on a guy coming off the ACL injury versus a guy with a history of concussions. And now I think Ryan Kelly is right at 30 or like coming up on it. So I would take the swing of the bat on Connor Lew. And over a 2-year sample, I think he's clearing away the best center in this class. So what they wanted Ryan Kelly to be, I'm hoping Connor Lew can be here at pick 49. All right, staying in the NFC North, I'm going to give the Detroit Lions Devin Moore. This team just needs to continue to take swings of the bat at corner. Rakestraw didn't play it all last year. Tyrion Arnold hasn't worked out. DJ Reed didn't work as a free agent signing. And they're all small guys. So Devin Moore as 6'3", really like what he is in zone coverage specifically. I think he's just the body type and the type of corner they just don't presently have on that roster. So I like him as a compliment to some of those other guys. And in a perfect world, more hits, and then hopefully Tyrion Arnold starts to figure it out on the other side, on the outside. All right, back to the Carolina Panthers. And like I said earlier, you could go edge at 19, and that's TJ Parker, it's Keldrick Falk, or you wait till 51, and, I have R. Mason, Gabe Akis, and Zion Young all ranked lower than Falk and TJ Parker, but the margin of difference is much slimmer than Kayun Sadiq to the next tight end, or if they go safety to the next safety. I'm not saying that they would, but I'm just throwing this all out there. So you could go edge at 19, but frankly, I would just wait. And then I'm going to go with Zion Young, one of the big winners out of the Senior Bowl, big power rusher. And Scorton plays with power, but, the 256 mark at the combine last year was just kind of like, I don't know what to do with this. Because 1 year at Purdue, he's a power rusher. 1 year, he wins with power, but he also has enough finesse to his game. And then he goes to A&M, tacks on some more weight, and then only tries to be a power rusher, slims down for the combine. So I'm trying to figure out what his archetype is really going to be at the next level. But whatever it is, Uman Mielen's definitely a finesse rusher. So Zion Young is the power, Scorton's the mix of both. Uman Mielen is like a designated third down pass rusher, passing down guy. Totally love what that trio is. And it's all three really young guys you can kind of build around as the basis of that pass rush for years to come in Carolina. Then we get to Green Bay here at 52. And look, this is something I haven't done yet. So Packers fans, I'm curious to know how you guys feel about this. But, once you get Micah Parsons back, that should unlock a cheat code specifically for their number 2 edge rusher, right? Like the amount of attention Micah Parsons get. I was thinking Rashawn Gary was going to have a huge, kind of resurgence last year, but he really didn't. And I like Kingsley Enagbare, but he's definitely more of an edge 3 to me. So I'm going to go with R. Mason Thomas. And I just think again, the amount of tension and the center of gravity that is Micah Parsons, R. Mason Thomas, if he gets one-on-ones, his first step and his bend, he's going to win those one-on-ones, man. And, I know the arm length, the run defense, all that's going to come into question here for R. Mason Thomas. But first step, get off. And then Justin, if we can add an inside counter on top of what he could do with his first step and his bend, I think you've got a really nasty number 2 edge rusher opposite of Micah Parsons. So I think this is, Micah Parsons was you make that trade to overhaul your pass rush component of your defense, right? Like that guy's going to put you over the top. But really, as great as Parsons was, I felt like that number 2 spot was lacking. So I want to address that here with our Mason Thomas at 52, who, again, run defense questions, certainly, but he's a pass rush winner. Then we get to the Commanders. Again, not a pick that we normally have here for Washington. This is a part of that trade of moving back from 7 to 21. And, this is a team that a couple times I've gone receiver at 7 just because I do think it would free up Terry McLaurin to be a whole lot better, especially as we're creeping up there in his age. And then you could go defense heavy the rest of the way. Instead, we went defense at 21, but now we've got a guy I can line up on the line of scrimmage and play as X receiver. Let's go Chris Brazzell here at 53. Also a guy who could take the top off the defense. So I think that frees up Terry McLaurin even more underneath Z, that sort of stuff. And I think in a perfect world here, Brazzell is your, X. Terry McLaurin becomes your Z. We're getting him in motion. We're keeping him a little bit off the line of scrimmage, but still playing him outside. And then Deebo Samuel you bring him back, hopefully for a modest contract. He's your he's your slot / your gadget player. That to me is a really interesting wide receiver trio, especially again with Brazzell's ability to stretch the field. That frees up McLaurin to do what he does in the intermediate. He's also a guy who can stretch the field, and then Deebo underneath. So really like how it rounds out that wide receiver room. So Chris Brazzell is the pick at 53 to the Commanders. On to pick number 54, the Philadelphia Eagles. There's just not a whole lot of great outside corner options. I'm just not really a Dalen Everett guy. So I'm going to go a little bit in a different direction. I'm going to go with D'Angelo Pons here and say that Cooper DeJean, if they do this, he's just going to be playing outside. And look, that's not unheard of to say. One, he didn't play a whole lot outside last year, but when he did, he played pretty well. And secondly, like Devon Witherspoon, with the emergence of Nicky Manwari, he's kind of gone from a slot guy to playing outside. Trent McDuffie has kind of positioned himself away from being a slot guy, despite how good he was at it, to being an outside corner for the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's not unheard of to see these guys with awesome early success in the slot eventually transition to being an outside corner. And as much as I think the corner position should be treated as a premium position because it allows you to do so many different things, it's a big part of why some teams like the Seattle Seahawks can just live in too high and make you deal with it, is because they have a Nicky Manwari who's a cheat code as a run defender. All that's true. And DeJean is a big part of that as well. But D'Angelo Pons brings that to the table as well. Great coverage player, but he's small, but he's willing to put his nose in the middle of it. So he's the next best available corner, him or Keontae Scott. You go here, you draft one of those two guys to be the nickel, and you're going to move DeJean out wide. And I think DeJean's got the goods to be able to be an outside corner. And I think that's part of the reason you draft him, right? Inside-outside flexibility. Same thing with Trent McDuffie. Same thing with Devon Witherspoon. So I kind of like this fit, but I have a feeling Eagles fans are going to be upset with me. But let me know down below in the comments. Let's get to the Chargers. Going to stick with Gabe Akis, inside-outside alignment, which is really nice, specifically if they lose Tuli Tuipulotu, and Tuipulotu hit the market, Khalil Mack on the market, Adave Owe, free agent. So a lot of question marks about that edge group in LA. So I like Akis specifically as a fit for that defense. And, Jesse Minter's gone, but a lot of the same going to be, kind of implemented on that side of the ball. So I think Akis as a guy to be able to play inside, outside there at that edge rush spot. All right. And then we get to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'm going to have Grayson Halton be the pick here. As high as I've had Halton go, but man, I liked his tape, but then he was just phenomenal at the Senior Bowl. And in a 4-man front, this is a 3-tech, 1-gap shooter that the Jags are looking for. And his pass rush juice on top of Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker signed me all the way up for that. And this team also, D-tackle wise, Eric Armstead, I've heard some rumors that could be a cap casualty. No guarantee there, but Devon Hamilton, I think, is definitely a player you're looking for more or a better player at that spot from. So Halton, one way or another, is either a Devon Hamilton replacement, or if Eric Armstead is indeed a cap casualty, this is how you kind of backfill the production he gave you. Perfect world, it's Armstead and Halton on the inside, though, if you can make that contract work. But love Halton and the pass rush juice he brings. And also holds his own as a run defender. That should be noted as well. All right. Pick 57, the Chicago Bears. Let's go to the edge rush crop back in round one with Cade McDonald. Got you that big D tackle, kind of be an Andrew Billings replacement. And now I'm going to give you Derek Moore. He's got the weight that's in the ballpark for what Dennis Allen has typically coveted out of his defensive linemen. And his first step is awesome. And then his ability to turn speed to power is fantastic. So you have one, high-end run defender, power rusher on one side, but here a little bit more explosive get off at the line of scrimmage. Moore also holds his own as a run defender, more than holds his own as a run defender. So I think he fits in from that standpoint too. He can be a 3-down guy for the Chicago Bears, but the ability to turn speed to power and his explosiveness in his first step would be a really fun addition opposite of Montez Sweat. Then to the San Francisco 49ers, the specific safety spot is one that, I've been kind of looking at. I was like, could definitely use an upgrade there. I don't know if they'll do it at corner, but you could. But again, I don't love the corner, availability here at 58. So I'm going to go Kamari Ramsey instead. I was never really a Jair Brown guy, so like this is kind of me falling back on my draft priors, and I didn't think he's been all that great as a player in the league. But I do think Ramsey as a free safety, Malik Mustafa as a box safety, that could absolutely work. Also, like, with Raheem Morris coming, it's a lot of cover 3 and it's a lot of cover 4. So whether it's the free safety in the cover 3 or it is truly one of those kind of slot free spots in the cover 4, the quarters look, I think Kamari Ramsey is a great fit there for Raheem Morris. And his playmaking ability is kind of shades of what you could get out of Jesse Bates. So I could totally see a world where you don't really see that this last year at USC where he's playing a lot in the slot, but 2 years ago where USC let him play free safety, a little bit more ball production, I could see a world where Raheem Morris kind of squints and looks and says, okay, that guy could be shades of my Jesse Bates for my defense now in San Francisco. Let me get to the Houston Texans at 59. I'm going to go with a little bit of an upside play here. I've been trying to find some interior defensive linemen, and this time for the Houston Texans, we waited a little bit longer than we normally do to give him one of those guys. I'm going to go with Darrell Jackson Jr. He's a guy with a ton of traits to be a second, maybe early third round guy. The play's not always awesome, but the flashes are really fun to watch. And I think that was true at the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl. Right? Like there's plenty of times at the Shrine Bowl where he gets stalled out and then he shows up for day 2 and 3 at the Senior Bowl, absolutely dominant in his very first rep at the Senior Bowl, long arm win. Oh, everyone's going crazy. And then after that's pretty quiet. So he's definitely a flashes guy, but he's got all the tools to be something way more than that. And just in a D'Amico Ryans defense, fit in the middle of a defensive line that has Will Anderson and has Danielle Hunter, that gets all that attention. I'd just be curious to see. And then furthermore, like Tommy Togiai is a really good run defender. So you kind of let Darrell Jackson just with these tools and traits kind of focus on pinning his ears back and see what we can get out of him as a pass rusher. So I'd just be curious to see what D'Amico Ryans can get out of this guy with a ton of upside. All right, on to the Buffalo Bills at pick 60. And on the opposite side of that, I'm going to go back to the interior defensive line. Well, just go with Dominique Orange. Like Orange is what he is. He did get to play a whole lot more snaps this year, which was definitely a big something I wanted to see. I think it was 2 years ago at Iowa State, he played like 357 snaps or something like that. Like you add all this up, it's like 350 something. So A-gap alone, he played more than that this year. So it was good to see him get a little bit more run and be out there because conditioning was something I was a little concerned about. But he's just not a great pass rusher. He is what he is. Like he is a 2-gapping, high-level run defender. And, occasionally will push the pocket as a pass rusher. But, like, that's not why you're drafting him. That being said, like DJ Jones, what he was in Denver, now you have Jim Leonard coming from Denver to be the DC in Buffalo, and they just don't really have that nose tackle, that DJ Jones type. So I give you Dominic Orange at 60. Next up are the Los Angeles Rams. I've been doing this selection a lot for their division rival, the San Francisco 49ers, but just as much as Deshaun Stribling is a great Jawan Jennings replacement for the 49ers, he is very much a LA Rams fit, high-end blocker, fits in those tight slots, can play inside and out, good after the catch, physical guy, solid, reliable hands. So this is kind of like whenever Devontae Adams hangs it up, I think Puka Nacua, Deshaun Stribling definitely works as a 1-2. But in the immediacy, you have all these tight ends you love, but also like now we're 3 deep in the event that Puka misses a week because he rolled an ankle or Devontae Adams pulled his hammy again and he's out 3 weeks. It kind of gives you a little bit more of a buffer in the here and now while also giving you, at least when they're all healthy, 3 guys that are just like perfect scheme fits for Sean McVay. Then we get to the Denver Broncos once again here at 62, and I'm going to give them Max Clare, a guy when you look at his 2-year sample of like the last year at Purdue and then this most recent season at Ohio State. The Purdue year, you get to see the pass catching upside and what he is. And then this last year at Ohio State, they asked him to bulk up, play more in line, and do more blocking. But together, that kind of makes an interesting resume for him where we've seen him do a little bit of both. But ultimately, I think what he showed this last year at Ohio State, it's not sexy, it's not flashy, but it makes it easy for an NFL team to draft him. So I think this is your kind of traditional angle you could go with here. And I've gone with 3 different tight ends here for the Broncos. Jolie, who is like, to me, a clear cut, like if you want Evan Ingram Joker, Jolie's the move. If you want the potential next Taysom Hill, I give you Eli Stowers, the former quarterback who's going to test off the chart once we get to Indy. Or you go with the traditional Max Clare. This is like, I'm not saying he's Jimmy Graham, but like, and Jimmy Graham didn't really play in line. But if you want someone who's kind of a traditional tight end, can do some of the blocking, but also bring some pass catching upside, I give you Max Clare. So Broncos fans, I'd be curious, like what direction do you think they go tight end wise? Do they go for the Taysom Hill guy and Stowers? Do they go for the clear Evan Ingram continuation with Jolie, or do they go with the traditional body like Max Clare? I'd love to hear kind of where you're thinking this goes. All right, New England Patriots on the clock at 63. Would absolutely love this fit. I'm going to go with Malachi Fields. This is just a better version of Mac Hollins, to be honest with you. Younger, cheaper, and better long-term option there is that X receiver, put him on the line of scrimmage, let him battle through press. Also, I think will run a better 40 than people give him, because it may take a moment to get to top-end speed, but once he's there, like I think mid 4.4s, right around Jaden Higgins was 4.47 last year. I think that's totally in the realm of possibility. I almost said field of possibility, but let's stay away from the puns. But I think that's certainly in the realm of possibilities for Malachi Fields. So this is your Mac Hollins replacement here at 63. And then we get back to the Seattle Seahawks once again. And same thing I did last week at 64. I'm going to go with Keelan Rutledge. Last year they drafted a guard in the first round and won a Super Bowl. So let's draft another one, see what happens. But Rutledge, right guard for the Georgia Tech offense, pretty good athlete. So I think he fits in that blocking scheme. And he's a guy that day one of the Senior Bowl, the coaches had to ask to tone it down. So that type of mauler, yeah, absolutely kind of feels like a fun addition there at 64 and just gets Anthony Bradford out of the way. All right, let's get on to round number 3. Arizona Cardinals. Look, Dalvin Tomlinson getting a little long in the tooth, not coming off a great year. I'm going to give you a younger, cheaper option. There is that nose tackle in that defense, and that is the Godfather Dante Corleone. Pick 66, the Tennessee Titans, no longer have a great slot guy. At one point it was Roger McCreary. They decided to trade him. So with Keontae Scott, a guy who really probably should go top 50, still on the board here at 66, plug him in. There's that nickel and get a ton of run defense reinforcements. Love that fit. Then we get to the Raiders at 67. As promised, not the only Indiana Hoosier we're going to draft here. Let's go get him. Let's go give Fernando Mendoza his James Jones, this guy who's the master of the back shoulders. Also, these guys have great chemistry from all the RPO slants, RPO hitches that they ran together at Indiana. Master of the late hands is Elijah Surratt. So I think that's your ex-boundary physical receiver that currently is not on the roster in Las Vegas. Pick 68, the Philadelphia Eagles. In the event they lose Dallas Goedert, I think Sam Roush is a very good fit for that offense. He is by far and away, to me, the best blocking tight end in this class, and he's kind of Sam Laporta minus a gear speed-wise. Like, I think he's fluid in and out of his breaks, but Laporta's just got a little bit more top-end speed than Roush. But to get the, toned-down version of Laporta here at 68 and his blocking ability, I think the Eagles would be all over that. All right, now we're back to the Houston Texans, and at 69, I think Anthony Hill Jr., this is kind of like the Darrell Jackson thing, where I'm not the world's biggest Anthony Hill Jr. guy. The flashes are really fun, though, so I'd be curious to see what DeMeco Ryans could get out of him on a play-by-play basis. Former linebacker, former rookie of the year in and of itself. And To'o is fine, but he's also maxed out athletically speaking, so he is what he is as a player. And he brings a lot of energy, but I do think there's a higher ceiling to be had. And Anthony Hill, I'm kind of describing as a slasher linebacker. You have these slashers in the NBA or in college basketball who are just masters of these backdoor cuts and things like that. Anthony Hill Jr. is the slashing guard equivalent. He's the slashing linebacker. Love him downhill. Really interesting pass rush flashes on his tape. And then he's got some really nice first step and some juice to be able to split gaps as a run defender too. So not fully there as a project as a linebacker, but I'd be curious to see what DeMeco Ryans can get out of him. All right, on to pick number 70. Looking back at that Cleveland Browns receiver room, yes, we went Carnell Tate, but then it's Jerry Jeudy and it's Malachi Corley, who I think there's definitely a guy here in Zachariah Branch who's a better version of Malachi Corley. And I'm also thinking about Todd Monken coming over as the head coach, and what he had was Zay Flowers. That feels like the top-tier outcome here for Zachariah Branch, who I'm not the world's biggest Branch guy, but it's undeniable. He's definitely got some crazy juice. There's some routes where the burst out of the break is jaw-dropping. It just comes down to, is he more than a gadget player? And that's the big question. So he could have made sense for the Cardinals a couple of picks ago, but they already had Greg Dortch, so I decided to pass on that. And then I got here at 70, and I was like, could Todd Monken look at Zachariah Branch and see a little bit of Zay Flowers? I think he could. So that's going to be the pick here at 70. Back to the Commanders here at 71. Man, this is another one of these teams where I didn't realize the safety position was as dire as it actually is. But if you look at this team, their PFF lineup or on our lads, man, sheesh, that safety room leads a whole lot to be desired. So I'm going to go A.J. Hulsey, a guy who can play over the top, in the box, and the split safety looks as well. So really versatile in where you line him up. But he's just a playmaker waiting to be had. Right place, right time, and with a ton of his interceptions. And they're true interceptions where he's just beating the quarterback to a spot. He's reading it out before the read itself from the QB. Or, forcing fumbles. A couple of forced fumbles in the last 2 years, too. So just a playmaker overall in the back end. I think that's something that really just isn't in the safety room presently for the Commanders. All right, next up for the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to go give them one of the top standouts from the Senior Bowl, Sam Hecht. He was a great run blocker at K-State, but they keep that offense away from true pass sets. So to get to see Sam Hecht at the Senior Bowl more than hold his own and pass, in those one-on-ones, kind of seeing what he would do as a pass protector, really gave me a lot of hope for what he could be. So third round, I'm here for the Sam Hecht love. Love the run blocking K-State. Senior Bowl to me, check the box for what he is as a pass protector. Ted Karras cannot come back as the center for the Cincinnati Bengals. So in goes Sam Hecht. All right, on to pick number 73. Another one of the quiet Senior Bowl winners. Nobody's really talking about Rashawn Benny. And furthermore, I know he's actually pretty low here in the PFF mock. They're going to have to update that. Benny's got good tape, but he kind of does it as like more of a single gap shooting D tackle, 305. I think in the Senior Bowl, he's like 298, so I think a little under 300. So he's not your two gapping nose tackle, but I think specifically with Penny's ability to hold the point, even in that one gapping role, and his just overall eyes, he's just always got his eyes on the ball carrier. He's just a high-level run defender. Brzee brings a little bit of the pass rush juice, certainly more than he does as a run defender. And I think Benny's a really nice run defense complement. Now, granted, two guys that are kind of more one-gapping, so, it's kind of a Brandon Staley trait for that defense, but maybe you would prefer more of a two-gapper. But here at 73, man, like Benny play in and play out at the Senior Bowl. Like it wasn't anything flashy, like, oh my God, gotta tweet that out. Here's the clip that's going to go viral. But it was just, oh man, there goes Benny again. Benny won another one? Is that Rashawn? There he does it again. That was his week, and he did it all 3 days. So Rashawn Benny, very quiet winner of the Senior Bowl, and here I think a really nice compliment to Brian Brzee as a run defender. All right, Kansas City Chiefs, you're next up at 74. Haven't gone receiver yet, and they could definitely use a guy who plays that X receiver spot, but could also stretch the field. So I give you Ted Hurst. I don't know why Trevor hates him here in the PFF mock draft sim, but Ted Hurst, really enjoyed what I saw at the Senior Bowl. To me, the athleticism looked like a guy that, because he forced 18 missed tackles at Georgia State, but it's like, is it the comp or is it the player? At the Senior Bowl, seeing him move around, it looks like it's the player. But also at the Senior Bowl, nice field stretching ability to stack corners, nice contested grab, had one-handed catch on the left sideline, day one of practice at the Senior Bowl. So he, to me, kind of showcased what I wanted to see. He fit the level of competition. He has these kind of highlights at Georgia State, but he did it at the Senior Bowl and did it against high-level competition. So here's your X field stretcher, line him up line of scrimmage receiver that the Kansas City Chiefs don't currently have. Then we're on to the Miami Dolphins here at 75. Bradley Chubb getting up there at age. I've also heard that, Jeff Hafley typically wants those four-man fronts, and Chop Robinson's kind of more of your old school 3-4 edge rusher. So could totally see a world where they're looking at the edge rush room and looking to overhaul some of those spots. I think they should keep Chop, but if you moved on from Bradley Chubb, that in and of itself opens up a spot where you can draft Joshua Josephs, who definitely fits kind of that four-man front look. Love the first step. Love the long arms. He's got long strides to go with it. Now it's just coming down to refining the hand placement, adding an inside counter. But here at 75, I like the traits he currently has, and I'd be willing to work on what he doesn't have. Next up, the Commanders at 76, back on the clock. Bobby Wagner getting up there in age, and at this point, he's kind of just like a high-level run defender. He just doesn't have the speed to be able to run with guys over the middle of the field like he once did in Seattle. So I'm going to give you Jake Golday. Really good run defender, but also he's a really nice athlete from the linebacker spot. So much so that like Cincy would line him up as an overhang / slot guy because they knew he could turn and run. So this is your Bobby Wagner replacement through and through here at 76, assuming he does hang it up. I'm just kind of in that camp thinking that this is probably it for Bobby Swags. All right, next up, pick 77 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a name that's been generating a lot of hype. My guy from Notre Dame, Billy Scrouth. And he was a guy who, beginning of the season, looked really solid, specifically as a pass protector. I was really encouraged with where his game was going. Then he got hurt mid-year, and that kind of stalled out where I thought his season was going to go. But if he didn't get hurt, I think he'd be, a pretty big name in this interior offensive line class. I don't think he would surpass Vega or even Pregnon, but I think he'd be in that next kind of group, the second-round wave, right there with Basantis. But he did get hurt, so that is worth noting. But the play you do have is really, really fun to watch. And that left guard spot, really both guard spots to me, kind of standing out as sore thumbs for that Tampa Bay offensive line. So I give you Billy Scrouth. Then we get back to the Indianapolis Colts here at 78. And in the event you lose Alec Pierce in free agency, which, I mean, man, you kind of hear the rumors of what his market might look like. Considering this team's going to have to bring back Daniel Jones, but also probably wants to bring back Braden Smith. But let's just say it's Daniel Jones. That in and of itself, like the rest of your cap space, you're kind of figuring out, okay, where is the room for Alec Pierce? So I can see a world where they're priced out. And if they are, Brandon Thompson won my bet for best 40 time at the Combine. Not a unique opinion there. It's the chalk opinion, but the guy is an instant accelerator and has top end speed for days. So in the event you lose your Alec Pierce, this is your field stretcher guy who can play outside and generate some easy offense by just challenging over the top. But also, like, I don't remember what game it was. There's a slant he catches. Corey Kinnon actually did it on his inside the film room. And it was a game that I had just watched on Thompson, but he catches a slant. And if it's not for a shoestring tackle, that's an 80-yard touchdown right there. So, like, even just what he does after the catch, this guy is a big play waiting to happen, a jetpack underneath his jersey for real. So, like him a ton for what he does for that Colts offense. Again, in the event they lose Pierce. If they keep Pierce, you're probably going somewhere else here at 78. Let's get back to the Atlanta Falcons. And, like I said earlier, I normally go receiver once we get to pick 48. But since I didn't, left an opening, I'm going to go with Skylar Bell. I think he'd be a really nice outside complement to Drake London. They have Darnell Mooney for one more year. They could cut him and save some money. But I'm going to say that they keep Mooney around. He's kind of the field stretching, speed guy. And then Skylar Bell kind of fills in where London works underneath, the intermediate, yards after the catch. Then you have Mooney to stretch the field. Everything else is kind of Skylar Bell. So like that, just adding one more weapon to that Kevin Stefanski offense. Then let's get back to the Baltimore Ravens at 80. Guard has been a major weakness for this team. A lot of gap scheme stuff. So Jalen Farmer at 348 pounds to me feels like a great gap scheme fit for this offense. And also another one of these guys where the Senior Bowl, it's like, God, he won another rep. There it is again. Jalen Farmer, rock solid. And he's not the only guard we'll say that about once we get to the very end of this third round. But Jalen Farmer coming off a really solid Senior Bowl, like his tape overall at Kentucky. And I think late third, early fourth definitely makes a lot of sense if you're a gap scheme team. Pick 81. Let's give the Jacksonville Jaguars some safety help. We haven't been able to do it just yet, but I'm going to go with, and I thought about Zakee Wheatley, but I have done that for the Jags before. So I'm going to go Genesis Smith. And I think Antonio Johnson could be that box safety, maybe even play some slot. I know they have Jordan Lewis to do the slot stuff, but I think Antonio Johnson is a box safety. Genesis Smith as the over-the-top guy. Sign me up for that. Love his speed and playmaking ability. The one flaw for Genesis Smith is he's just not a great tackler, but Antonio Johnson's a very good tackler. And if Genesis is your free safety, he's your last line of defense, I'm willing to live with that one weakness to his profile here at 81. Now we get back to the Minnesota Vikings. I do like sprinkling in some running back selections for this team. We haven't done it yet. And here is Jonah Coleman. I think he's like a really, honestly, kind of the perfect blend between Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. He's got the kind of between the tackles, thumper, 228 pounds that Mason brings to the table, but he's also light on his feet, can make some nice cuts, bounce it outside and bring a little bit more, not saying he's breaking off 60-yarders, but a little bit more big playability than Jordan Mason brings to the table, and that's where Aaron Jones was supposed to fit in the mix. Additionally, Jones, really solid pass catcher. Jonah Coleman, I think, a really could be, with more chances, a really solid pass catcher at the next level, and holds his own as a pass blocker. So, again, he's just kind of the amalgamation of Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. So, love that fit in Minnesota. All right, on to pick number 83, the Carolina Panthers. We haven't gone linebacker yet, and no disrespect, but simply put, their linebacker unit last year struggled mightily in coverage. So really, if you want to just focus on coverage here, Kyle Lewis would be the pick. But 220 pounds is a little hard to justify over someone with a little bit more prototypical size, 235 pounds of Jacob Rodriguez, but also a guy who was fantastic in coverage last year, great football IQ, has it between the ears, and he's a playmaker waiting to happen, whether it's being in the right spot, right time, turning that into an interception, or it's the peanut punch, being able to punch it loose. So I think coverage ability in and of itself, this is a huge win for the Panthers, but I think this is your overall three-down linebacker in the middle of that defense for years to come. Then we get to the Green Bay Packers at 84. Still got my boy Julian Neal on the board. Bigger guy who I think really, especially in zone coverage, thrives, and I think that's going to be the direction that Green Bay is ultimately keeping that defense in. So love his eyes, love the ball skills, and was stride for stride on a lot of really, really good competition down at the Senior Bowl. He was the guy who got mossed by Ted Hurst on that one-handed grab, but he was at the catch point, and if it wasn't a 6'3" receiver, that ball's incomplete. So, that was the one guy who could have made that grab over Neal. So, I'm willing to live with it. 6'1.5", hit almost 20 miles an hour on the zebra down at the Senior Bowl. I like a lot about what Julian Neal brings to the table. Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, Steelers fans, I don't love doing this either, but I am going to go with the Nuss Bus here at 85. We haven't gone quarterback. I know they have Will Howard from a year ago, but look, they're going to have to take another swing of the bat. Like, Will Howard is a career backup in the making. I'm not sure Nussmeier is anything different, but especially in the event that Aaron Rodgers isn't back, you're gonna have to add something to that room. So I'm gonna go Garrett Nussmeier. I think after a good Senior Bowl, he is gonna go somewhere in the third round. Maybe he lasts until the early fourth, but I think he does go somewhere on day two ultimately. And I prefer to the third round than the second. So here at 85, I can at least swallow that as a Steelers fan just to see the dart throw, what could potentially be there. Let's get on to pick number 86, LA Chargers. Look, Elijah Molden's a good player, but they got some good play out of Tony Jefferson last year, but Jefferson's well beyond 30. So I think taking another safety would go a long way. They've kind of moved Derwin James in that nickel role. So I think if you're going to keep James in the slot, Elijah Molden plus Zakee Wheatley, that's a nice safety tandem of the future. And both those guys can thrive wherever you move them up. Free safety, strong safety, split safety looks. Both those guys are very versatile. So I like that as a 1-2 punch, putting Molden and Wheatley together on the back end. Then we get to pick number 87, Miami Dolphins. Look, Darren Waller probably not going to be back, and Greg Dulcich could work, but I can also see a world where a new head coach coming in, they're looking for something a little different, and I give you Eli Stowers. I think he's just going to blow up the combine, and I just don't see a world where he gets out of the top 100 because of that. Tip Ryman went 88 top 100 picks because he was a sick blocker and he was an awesome athlete at the combine. Theo Johnson had battled some injuries at Penn State, some flashes as a receiver, great athletic testing at the combine, goes top 100. So I think that's going to be the case here for Eli Stauer. So with a new coach, new offensive coordinator there, I can see a world where they're moving on from Greg Dulcich as that tight end and instead go the Eli Stauer's route. Jags are back on the clock here at 88. Really, I think Robert Hainsey is expendable, but also Patrick McCarry. So either way you spin it, I really like the fit of my boy. Where is Brian Parker Jr.? Where is Brian Parker the second? Do they have him under tackles? They might have him under tackles. They have him under tackles still. He's a center. He went to the Shrine Bowl and he even played at center. So that was good to see him actually at that position versus projecting it. And I thought he had a pretty good Shrine week all in all, getting to see him at center. So you play him at center. Hainsey's also got experience playing guard. So I think really here, McCarry becomes your swing offensive lineman. Parker's your center. Hainsey for a moment moves over to guard, and then you're adding a little bit of that into your offensive line that could definitely use some new pieces in that mix. All right, back to the Chicago Bears. Look, DJ Moore, I'm assuming is gone, and I think you already got the perfect Z replacement in Luther Burden Jr. to be that DJ Moore replacement. But that does leave an opening then in the slot as that receiver 3. And frankly, I would just keep a strength of strength. Let's stay 3 receivers deep. And let's go with Antonio Williams, who's gotten kind of forgotten about in this entire draft class. He's not the first round guy that we maybe thought he would be over the summer, but he got hurt week 1. But once he came back, he was a big catalyst for why him and Cade Klubnik and that offense overall in Clemson started to look like what we kind of expected them to be coming into the season. So Antonio Williams should not get out of the top 100. He's a very good slot receiver. And again, with Burden sliding over to be the DJ Moore replacement, we were pretty much sure that's going to happen. That leaves an opening in the slot. I give you Antonio Williams, one more pass catcher, one more weapon after the catch for Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson to use. Then we're on to the Miami Dolphins once again. And I know we went corner round 1, but frankly, Rasul Douglas getting up there in age, Jack Jones is up and down. I don't think you have to stop there. You could also go nickel with someone like a Chandler Rivers to replace Kader Kohu. Wouldn't hate that whatsoever. But I wanted to give Will Lee the third a shout. Good athlete, long arms, physical corner, would go get receivers at the line of scrimmage. And I just love the mentality he plays with. He's a little up and down. I worry about the stiffness in the hips, but all in all, I'd be willing to take a shot on him as like a man press type of archetype corner, like him more than Davis and Igbinosin in that type of role. And Jeff Hafley's, Boston College MO was like man press. So like Mansour Delane, Will Lee, 2 different types of corners. Ultimately, I think Delane can play the man press stuff too. He's just good at whatever you want him to do. But I'm kind of hedging my bets here. Whatever Jeff Hafley decides to do on the defensive side, I've got a body for that. Now, granted, Delane is going to be fitting everything. So we'll leave that point. Another number 2 corner. I'd be curious to see if you're a Dolphins fan, if it's not Will Lee, which one of those corners would you have taken here at 90? All right, back to the Bills at 91. I'm going to go with Romello Height here, assuming Joey Bosa doesn't come back, which, just because of the age and the injury questions, I could totally see where the Bills are looking to get younger, cheaper at that position, get healthier at that position. So I'm going to give you Romello Height. His size and his weight probably prohibit him from being anything more than a GPR, but I think here at 91, you're willing to take that swing of the bat. And this is a team that's going to be playing with a lot of leads. They have a very good offense. They can put up a lot of points. They're going to need a guy who's a fourth quarter closer. I keep going back to this. They're Dwight Freeney, who can put this game away. And I think Romello Height, in a lot of ways, is kind of poor man's David Bailey without the ability to be like a 2.5 down edge rusher. You don't really want him out on the field in those rundowns. So I give you Romello Height as like one of many really great DPR options in this draft. And I think that's a great Joey Bosa replacement for the Buffalo Bills. Pick 92, I'm going to give the San Francisco 49ers one of my favorite players in this draft. I don't understand the hate for Logan Jones. I'm a big Logan Jones guy. I get it. He's like a little undersized and the arms are a little stubby, but I love the run blocking tape. I think he absolutely battles in pass protection. So I think this is a nice plug and play option there at center. And then Brent Dill, I'm pretty sure, has even got guard experience. So you could kick him over to play left guard as well for this 49ers team. So whether it's guard or center, I would like to see this team add a little bit, add one more piece to that interior offensive line. And I think Logan Jones is better than the 192nd player on the PFF board. So I'm willing to take a swing of the bat on him inside the top 100. And I think it's a great scheme fit given how he moves in the run game for that Shanahan offense. Next up are the Los Angeles Rams. We haven't gone right tackle yet. And, as we got to this point, I was like, oh, yeah. You know who else was kind of a nice Shrine Bowl presence? Emil Wagner. And he showed up at like 307 pounds. So, I think that's a weight that he could play at the next level. He continues to add weight. But the impressive thing was sometimes when you see these guys add weight, you're like, okay, the feet are now sluggish. They can't move, essentially. But that wasn't the case. Like Shrine Bowl, he looked like Emil Wagner. He just looked like a bigger version of him, which is great to see. So I think this is like basically I've gone into this mock saying, you know what, Warren McClendon played good football for the Rams, so I'm not going to go right tackle early. But in the event that McClendon takes a step back, which is not unheard of for a day 3 pick, former day 3 selection, you at least have Emil Wagner as a top 100 pick to kind of backfill that spot. Also, you may get into a spot where in 2 years' time, the cap situation gets a little murky. Can you pay all these guys? It might just be good to have a third tackle waiting in the wings, whether it's to replace Alaric Jackson or it's to replace Warren McClendon. So future-proofing that position, whether it's contract problems or it's just in case McClendon does take a step back, we have a body who could fill in there at right tackle. And again, I think the Shrine Bowl performance for Emil Wagner was ultimately a win. I thought he looked pretty good there down in Frisco. All right, next up, the Denver Broncos. Going to go to the linebacker well, and I thought about Kyle Lewis here, but I don't know if that size, if Vance Joseph would go for it, but I do think he would go for Aiden Fisher. And Aiden Fisher's a good athlete, too. He's a white linebacker, and sometimes we'll get kind of put into a certain bucket because of that. But Aiden Fisher flies the football, man. He's another tractor beam to the ball, man. He really is. So I like Aiden Fisher a good bit for what he is as a run defender and also solid enough in coverage. Don't know if there's really anything more as a pass rusher than just, hey, blitz straight forward and just line up an offensive lineman and kind of eat a block and give us a numbers advantage. Got a shades of Bart Scott from that standpoint. I don't know if there's anything more than that pass rush wise, but as a run defender, coverage player, really good between the ears, high football IQ, high football character on top of that, sure tackler. I could totally see a world where this is if you're going to do it at 94 versus doing it earlier, this is a Vance Joseph type of linebacker to get a little bit younger behind the likes of Greenlaw, Strenard, and Alex Singleton. All right, back to the New England Patriots. Here's that other interior offensive lineman that I was talking about earlier who all throughout the Senior Bowl, it's damn, he won another one. Man, he looks good. That's another rep win. And that's Jeremiah Wright. Now, he was Auburn's right guard, so I'm kind of projecting that you play him at right guard. Michael Onwenu then is going to flip over to play left guard, which he has done. He hasn't done it in a long time, but he has played some left guard in his career. And then we're going to move Jared Wilson over to center because, look, as much as Will Campbell he was kind of the punching bag for the Patriots Super Bowl loss, Jared Wilson was as bad, maybe worse in the Super Bowl and really in that playoff run in and of itself. And I never saw him as a guard coming out of Georgia. He was a top 100 player for me last year's class as the most athletic center in combine history, but he was a center to me through and through. So I don't get playing McGuard. And this is the type of move that enables us to, okay, Garrett Bradbury, appreciate your contributions, move along now. Jarrett Wilson's going to play center. We'll move Mike Onwenu over to left guard. Jeremiah Wright slots in at right guard then. And again, he was just fantastic all week long in those one-on-ones and even in the team drills. Now, the next question is going to be the athletic testing, where is he at in regards to how athletic he is? But you even see here more of a, I'd like to see these even out a little bit more, but 348 pounds, this guy's a gap fit. And I have to overall go to the Auburn numbers to see how much they did zone versus gap, and PFF has that. So I'll have that for the next mock draft. But I do think this guy is a gap scheme fit given his body type, and overall really impressed with him at the Senior Bowl. So it's a win here, patching up the guard spot, but it's also a win moving Jared Wilson over to center. All right, and now this is where I'm going to have Kyle Lewis come off the board because ultimately what we saw at the Senior Bowl, he's too good to get out of the top 100. The tough part is he's 6'1", 220, not Deontay Lawson. He's 6'1", 220. So what do you do with that? But if there's a guy who can figure it out, it's Mike frickin' McDonald. So one of the craziest coverage linebackers I've ever gotten the chance to scout. I'm just going to drop him into Seattle and say, hey, Mike Mack, do your thing. So just another piece for a guy who absolutely doesn't need any more pieces to play with. But, man, if there's a guy to figure it out, it's Mike Mack. Pick number 97, Harrison Smith, going to be hitting probably, I would assume he's retiring this year, Notre Dame legend. But in the event that he does, I'm going to go with Bud Clark, a guy who's really gotten the chance to play everywhere over his time at TCU, has played a good amount in the slot, but also has gone back and forth between getting to play in the box, but also playing some free safety. And then at the Senior Bowl, another one of these Senior Bowl guys who just popped a ton on day 2 and 3, was fantastic as a tight end matchup guy in the one-on-ones, and then all throughout team practices. And that's primarily zone coverage, specifically for a safety. But all throughout those team practices, he was making plays left, right, and center, turning it into turnovers, PBUs, getting the spot, forcing a pass breakup. Man, he was fantastic. Another guy that I'm curious what the athletic testing comes in at, but ton of football experience over his time at TCU, did it in a variety of different spots. So very Brian Flores-esque from that standpoint. But in the event Harrison Smith retires, I really like Bud Clark as a replacement there for Smith. Eagles are next up. And just there's a couple different edge rushers we could go with here, but you bring Brandon Graham out of retirement. That tells me you're looking for a power rusher here. Kieran Crawford is souped up and twitchy and an interesting guy that's getting generating some buzz. Denai Dennis Sutton, this guy who can win with length and also a little bit more athletic and light on his feet than you would think for 265. Nadame Tucker, the definition of fun to watch. Really thought about that here. But instead, I think Anthony Lucas, 285 pounds. This is kind of that speed to power guy that they're looking for to be that Brandon Graham replacement. Not the world's greatest run defender, but I think has the body type to certainly grow in that regard. So I think some of that's also just like USC coaching. So I'm going to go with Anthony Lucas there as that next edge rusher, that power rusher they just don't currently have on the roster, and ultimately should be the Brandon Graham replacement. Let me get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love going slot corner for this team. And man, a guy that I just recently watched who is an absolute joy to watch is Trayden Stutes. Late breakout, 6-year guy in college football, but another one of these dudes who, prototypical size, but has played in a lot of different spots. But this last year, finally got the chance to and I guess a couple years ago, did get a significant amount of playing time in the nickel. But this year in the slot, oh my God, just an absolute joy to watch. Really enjoyed him as a tackler. Great coverage ability too. And it's really the ball tracking. Like, he has one of the craziest interceptions you'll see all season long. And it came in the Arizona State game. He's just got this crazy deep downfield interception up over the receiver, makes the grab, hauls it in, survives the contact with the ground. I mean, really fun player, and a guy that you can play in the slot. You can play some free, you can play some box safety. So I hope the Pittsburgh Steelers move him around. Hope Patrick Graham uses him as a versatile chess piece, but specifically in the nickel, the Steelers have been hurting in that spot ever since they let Mike Hilton go. So I really hope Trayden Stutes can kind of end that slide and end that area of hurt on that Steelers defense. And then last but not least, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, their third of these three-round selections. And I was looking at their edge room, and especially considering they have the ability to collapse Trayvon Walker inside on passing downs, I was like, ever since Arden Key left, they're kind of lacking that third pass rusher, which, again, you can get on the field because you can collapse Trayvon Walker inside. So I'm going to stay in-state. And again, Adame Tucker, definitely in consideration here. Really thought about Tucker. Also, definitely want to shout him out as a Chargers fit. They just hired Western Michigan's DC to be their DC. So, like, Adame Tucker could be a Charger in the making. But I'm going to go with Malachi Lawrence because for a DPR, him and Tucker are like top of the list guys. But I'll go with Lawrence because he's just a little bit bigger. And I think with his hand fighting and overall just a deeper arsenal of moves right now, I'll give Malachi Lawrence the bump. And then him as that third pass rusher on top of Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker. I mean, absolutely sign me up for that pass rush and what Anthony Caponelli could do with deploying those three guys all at the same time on that Jags defense. But guys, at long last, that does it. That's 3 rounds of this updated mock draft. And I'm just now remembering I have my coffee in front of me. I mentioned that off top, but never once took a sip. But, cheers, folks. If you made it to this point of the video, I cheers to you. But I'm scrolling through all 100 selections here with you after an hour and 20 minutes worth of recording to go ahead and showcase each and every pick one more time and to remind you of your favorite team in the haul that I gave your squad. So down below in the comment section, if you're watching on YouTube, let me hear your thoughts. Who's your squad? And what do you think of the team, the overall 3 rounds worth of picks that I gave your squad? Did you think it's the whole that makes sense? Does it address your biggest areas of need, position value-wise? And then do you overall think that the players are scheme fits for your team? I'd love to hear all those thoughts and then some down below in the comment section. Or even if you don't want to focus on your team, who went too high, who went too low, who surprised you with where they went in this mock draft? Any and all thoughts, let me hear it down below in the comment section. If you're watching on Twitter, definitely give me a follow. Give 32B Writers a follow. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me in my DMs. You can follow me at TJ Wengert. My ad is literally right below me right as we speak. But guys, up next here on 32 is going to be our Combine Primer. So really excited to break down who I think the biggest winners, who has a lot to gain, all that fun stuff out of the Combine starting next week. I'm excited to bring that video your way. But again, let me hear your thoughts on this updated 3-round NFL mock draft down below in the comments or in my DMs. But thank you very much for watching. And until next time, we are signing off.